Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and it is Prime Day, or rather Prime Week here in the US at the time I'm recording this video. And I got in on loan from Asus the other day, one of their laptops that is on sale during this sale event, and I'm sure it's going to go on sale again, so this video should have relevance throughout the year. This is the Strix G16 in their ROG line of gaming laptops. You can tell it's a gaming laptop because it's got all of the LED lighting on board here. And it's not a bad kind of mid-level gaming laptop, and we're going to take a look at all of its features and some of the gaming performance out of this in just a second. But I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that this is on loan from Asus, and we're done with this. It goes back to them. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. This is not a sponsored review, nor is anyone reviewing or approving what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's get into it now and see what this gaming laptop is all about. Now, I'm not sure what the pricing is going to be on this laptop from one day until the next, so definitely check my link in the video description. But it is around the $1,300 mark at the time I am shooting this video. Now, this is a gaming laptop with an Intel i7-14650HX processor. That is an older Intel chip, but as you'll see in a little bit, it is more than adequate, I think, for how they configured this machine. This is also equipped with an RTX 5060 GPU from NVIDIA. The GPU has 8 gigabytes of RAM and will run at a maximum of 115 watts. And there are some compromises here, though, mostly on the display side. So the display is not a super high-res one. It's 1920 by 1200, effectively 1080p class, but it is in a 16 by 10 aspect ratio, so it is a little bit taller than a widescreen 1080p display might be. However, it does run at 165 hertz, and it has G-Sync capability on board too. So games do look really nice on it. And I think the pairing of this display with the GPU and CPU they have is fine, because you're going to get good frame rates at high quality settings. And although you don't have a 4K or a 2K display here, it is going to look pretty nice on here, given the fact that it's not all that large of a display. And I neglected to say that this is a 16-inch display, again running at that 1920 by 1200 resolution. The display runs at a 3 millisecond response rate. I'm going to put the brightness on this because they didn't have it in the specs, probably at around 350 nits, give or take. It's not incredibly bright, but it's bright enough for most applications there. The laptop itself weighs in at about 5.84 pounds or 2.65 kilograms. It is mostly plastic as a lower end device, although there is metal on the back of the display. Now, there are some neat things about this, and I have to shut it down for a second to show you this. And as I do that, I'll talk about the RAM and the storage on it. So this one came with 16 gigabytes of DDR5 5600 RAM, and it has a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. But check out how easy it is to swap out components here. There's no screws necessary. There's a little latch here, and what you do is just turn it to the left until it clicks, then you push back on it, and you lift the whole thing up, and now you've got access to your storage, your RAM, and your additional storage slot. So you have 2 NVMe slots on here. The 1 terabyte drive that it comes with is a PCI Express 4 drive, and you've got another slot that can support a second Gen 4 drive as well. You can see the cooling fans here, and your memory goes in over here. So very, very easy to work on this. Probably one of the easier ones I've seen out there. So that was really nice to see if you ever wanted to swap out storage. And when you're ready, you just snap it back into place here, and it goes back to where it was before. Now, you probably saw that LED light around the bottom. It covers the entire device here. It basically is a big square of LED lighting. And we'll fire this back up again so you can see that in action. Unfortunately, they don't have much in the way of keyboard lighting on this. So it does have 3 or 4 zones here on the top, so you can change the colors in different zones on the keyboard. But I found that the application to change those zones around is very complicated. So you can isolate the keyboard from the LED strip on the bottom, but you have to go through some customization settings to get yourself there. It's not all that intuitive to be able to set things up, but you can't set lighting on a per key basis, unfortunately. And just to show you how unintuitive the lighting is on this device, what you have to do is go into their Armory Crate software, which is what you use to control everything. You go to Devices, you click on your laptop here. Now, if I jump through these basic effects here, I can change the color scheme for the lower section here, but also the keyboard. You can also see how bright it is. And if I wanted to turn off the zone here, I've got to go to Settings. And then what you need to do is pull down one of these state modes here. So we're going to look at the awake one when the computer is on. And if I go over to when plugged in and turn the laptop light zone off, that will disable the lower light but keep the keyboard light on. So if you wanted to separate the two, that's how you do it. But it looks like at the default level, both are controlled the same way. Now, Aura Sync is what you have to use to go in to actually change how all this other stuff works. And that is a lot of work, to be honest with you, to get things lit differently than these default settings. So I think they could improve this a little bit to make it easier to get the lighting that you're after, because everything is just disjointed as far as how you control it. But it's relatively easy here to control the static color if you wanted something a little bit different. The keyboard and trackpad, though, as this reboots, is actually pretty nice here. It's got a nice big size keyboard, lots of key travel. The lighting looks pretty cool in the dark, and your keys here are actually translucent, so you will see the light poking through the letters on the other keys, and the other keys over here are kind of the inverse of that. Nice big trackpad here, as you can see, along with some media controls there towards the top. Now, like most gaming laptops, you get a good number of ports on this one, so let's take a look and see what we've got here. This is your power input for its 280 watt power supply. As power supplies go, it's not huge. It's still larger than what you get on an Ultrabook, but a little more portable than I've seen on other similar laptops recently. This is a gigabit Ethernet port here, so you can get it hardwired into your network. Here you've got an HDMI output. This is USB-A that can run at 10 gigabits per second. This is a Thunderbolt port. And one of the things I often see on these lower-end gaming laptops is a lack of Thunderbolt. This one has it. And why Thunderbolt is important is because if you're doing video production like I do, you can get breakout boxes so you can actually use desktop input cards for your cameras. So at my local high school, I set them up with a little Thunderbolt box with a Blackmagic card for 4 SDI inputs, so they can bring 4 cameras in at the same time over that Thunderbolt port, and that's really useful for production. So this is something I would recommend for vMix and OBS and others. And of course, it's just nice to have a Thunderbolt port because this can also do video output. Next to it, you've got a USB Type-C port. This is 10 gigabits per second, so it's not going to work with Thunderbolt devices like this port will, even though they look the same. But this port will do video output as well, so you can get 3 different displays coming out of this simultaneously. Here you've got your headphone jack. On the other side, we've got a few more ports, a pair of USB-A ports that are also running at 10 gigabits per second each, so you can get your headsets and your USB mice and keyboards and other things installed as well. Nothing here on the back, but it's radiator for cooling, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Now, this does have a battery on board. You might have seen it when we cracked open the bottom. Don't expect great battery life out of this when you're gaming, maybe an hour or 2, if that. But when you're using it as a regular desktop computer, it can run a little more efficiently. So if you are doing web browsing and document editing and emails and stuff, it's not out of the realm of possibility, at least in my testing, to get 6 to 8 hours out of the battery, provided you are keeping display brightness down. You've got the performance setting at a battery saving level for that kind of work. It is possible to use this a little bit like a traditional laptop while still gaining the power of its graphics performance when you've got it plugged in. Now, it does have a 1080p webcam on the top. The resolution looks okay. The image quality could be a little better on it, but it's passable for a Zoom call or doing stuff in Discord or whatever. One thing I do like is that it does have a face recognition IR camera built in as well, so you can log into the machine with your face, and so you do have some biometrics on this one, even though it doesn't have a fingerprint reader. So that's the overall hardware here. Not bad. And what we're going to do now is take a look at how it plays games and then see some benchmarks. So first up here, we'll take a look at Cyberpunk 2077. I was running this on the ray tracing low settings, and as you can see, we're getting about 90 frames per second or so in the bar area here. We can jump ahead a little bit to the outdoor section, and you can see what that looks like. Image quality is great on here, and it's running at a great frame rate. Most of the time in the 90 to 100 frames per second territory. Now remember, we do have a 165 hertz display on here, So it could go higher with the specs that it has, but I'm an image quality guy. I like a nice image running at a rather smooth frame rate. I don't need the max frame rate every time. So if I can get north of 60 frames per second with a nice looking image, I'm going to take that, and that's what I was able to get out of this. Again, the sweet spot here is that you've got this 16-inch display running at effectively a 1080p resolution, so you're able to drive a higher frame rate and have things still look pretty good on the display. And I should also mention that all of the games that we're demoing here are running at the native resolution of the display. Next up is one of my favorite games, No Man's Sky. I set it to ultra settings. Look how nice it looks. And here we were running between 90 and 100 frames per second. And for all of these, I've also enabled the DLSS, which does give you a little boost in frame rate as well with some of NVIDIA's AI features. But I was really pleased with how the game looked and played here. And overall, a very good experience, most of the time north of 90 frames per second. Isn't this game cool? You can jump in your spaceship and go anywhere you want and build your own base. How neat is that? And I also ran Red Dead Redemption 2. Again, native resolution of the display. Set it to ultra settings once again with DLSS set to auto. And I was getting between 75 and 85 frames per second. Again, I prefer image quality to frame rate, and I got both here. Although we're not running over 100 frames per second here, the image quality looks spectacular on this display. And I have to say, for a 1920 by 1200 display, it really does look nice, and it's got some nice anti-glare stuff on it too. This is my studio light here, and it's a very bright light, and it does mask out a lot of it. So the display looks better than it should for this resolution. And on the 3D Mark Timespy benchmark test, we got a score of 12,960. And you'll note that this is better than last year's version of this laptop that had an RTX 4060 on board with a prior generation Intel chip. So we've got better CPU performance and better graphical performance. But also note that the graphical performance is pretty close to what we got out of an RTX 4070 from one of Asus's tough gaming laptops we looked at this time last year. So this is a nicely performing GPU that consumes a little less power. And it's getting close to what I get out of my gaming PC upstairs, which is getting a little bit older now with an RTX 3080 and an i9-9900K. Now, I also ran the 3D Mark stress test, and there we got a passing grade of 99.2%. So that indicates we're not going to see much in the way of performance degradation under heavy sustained load. You can also see what the CPU and GPU temperatures were. And as you saw earlier, there are 3 cooling fans on the bottom of this. You've got a lot of exhaust in the back, so it does seem to be handling airflow quite well on this device, and it's able to keep itself cool. I was also pleased with the fan noise. You will eventually hear the fan kick on, obviously, and it does get a little bit higher in rate as you play longer, but it's not one of these obnoxiously loud fans. It doesn't sound like a wind tunnel. So as far as fans go, this is one of the more quieter gaming laptops that I have tested recently. You're going to hear the fan, but it's not going to be anywhere near as loud as some of the other ones that you might have bought a couple of years ago. As a result, I do think the casing here is a bit thicker than you might otherwise expect, but I think it does help to get that hot air routed properly. And as you can see, you've just got a lot of airflow here on the back, and you need room to do that. But it does seem to result in a quieter operation and apparently very good cooling performance, at least by my testing. So all in, I'm pretty pleased with this one. Typically, Asus has their lower-end tough line that delivers a lot of performance, but with loud fan noise and build quality that isn't quite as good as their higher-end models. This one sits nicely in the middle, and perhaps maybe on the lower end of the middle when it comes to price, but it's built well. It's got a very nice construction here. It's not obnoxious looking. The fan is quiet. The display looks better than it should for its resolution, as I noted. The games run great on it at high quality settings, and there's not much to complain about here if you are trying to keep your costs down as much as possible. I like this one a lot as a video producer who does play games occasionally. I can do both on it. I like the fact that it's got the Thunderbolt port on there, and I can play my games at a decent resolution with high quality at very nicely playable frame rates. So for me, I kind of like this one quite a bit. I am sure there are others close to its price where you might find some things that are a little better from other brands perhaps. But as far as this one is concerned, I do think this is a nice package here that Asus has put together. That will do it for this one. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.